as far north as Kennebunkport, Maine, as far south as Key West, Florida, as far east as Long Island, New York, and as far west as Long Beach, California, and all the points in between. For those of you that are listening to us around the world, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever greeting best suits the time zone that you're in. There are several things that you can do to stop the spread of respiratory diseases like COVID-19. Number one, wash your hands with warm soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Now, if you don't know what 20 seconds are, just sing happy birthday to yourself. And when you've completed that song, guess what? You've completed 20 seconds. Number two, cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze. Yes, I know that sounds like common sense, but how many of you know, like me, that the least common thing these days is common sense? Number three, wipe down frequently touched objects and items with some type of disinfectant. And you may want to mix in some hand sanitizer in your vehicle so that when you pump gas, since you don't know who touched that gas pump prior to you touching it, you can sanitize your hands. Number four, stay at home when you are sick, and please, 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 please stay away from people who are sick, and stay home when you are sick. That job, that event, or that thing that you think just can't go on because you're not there, guess what? It's going to go on. This was brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station, No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise, powered by Google, sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines. If you are in the Cleveland area on the first or third Saturday of the month, I've got some great news for you. At 6812 Woodland Avenue, right here in Cleveland, Ohio, between the hours of 10:30 a.m. and 2 p.m., they are giving away a free bag of groceries. That's right, I didn't stutter. I did say free in that you don't pay. And listen, you do not have to show proof of residence. You don't have to show proof of income. You don't have to show anything. But that's not entirely correct. There's one thing you do have to show, and that is up, in that you show up and you get the free bag of groceries, no questions asked. Now, it would be great if that was all it were, but in addition to the free bag of groceries, you get free clothing for adults, which would be yourself, and children. So you get free groceries, free clothing for you and your children. But it doesn't stop there, because if you are there between the hours of 11 a.m. and 1:30 p.m., you get a free hot lunch. So that dispels the notion that people say that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Well, in this case, there is at 6812 Woodland Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio, on the first and third Saturday of each month. So there you have it. We want to shout out the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, who's been doing this since 2020. We want to shout out Major Care Ministries and also Williams Temple Church of God in Christ, who houses this event the first and third Saturday of each month. Welcome back. We've been away for a while. We were on vacation for the month of August, and we had some technical things last week, so we're back. It's good to be back in this chair again. If this is the first time you've been listening to the show, where have you been? No, I'm just teasing, but this is what we do here on the right side. We talk politics, we talk sports, we talk the issues of the day. I throw some topics out on the table. I give my take on said topics. And then we invite you to call in with your take at 216-939-5087, 216-939-5087. Now listen, you do not always have to agree with us. In fact, that's what makes good talk back and forth. But we just ask that you make your points concise, you stick to the subject, and you don't ramble on, or you will hear the sound of Mr. Dial Tone. If you are a regular listener to this show, you know that when we have guests in studio, we cater our time to whatever it is we're talking about with these guests. And today, we are honored to have in studio with us two well-known individuals here in the Cleveland area in Northeast Ohio. If you listen to talk radio here in Northeast Ohio, these two gentlemen's voices will be very familiar to you. I'm going to give you their birth names, their government names, if you will, and then I will give you the names which you would probably better know them by if you are a regular listener to talk radio. To my right, I have Jay Benke, who is better known as Always Positive Jay. Jay has been on the show before. He was on here a couple of years ago when we did a round table on that day. And so we're just so glad to have him back in the studio with us again today. Jay, welcome to the right side.
Oh, thanks for having me back. It's always a good time to talk with you, Jeff.
Good to have you. And then to my left, I have Keith Norman, but if you regular listener to Talk Radio in Cleveland, you don't know him by Keith Norman. You know him as Keith in Lakewood or KIL. Keith, welcome to the right side. This is your first time being here. We're so glad to have you with us today.
It's an honor being here. A pleasure to be in your company today, Jeff.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. So what we're going to do today, folks, is we're doing a NFL/college football roundtable today. As you are well aware, the NFL season, well, actually it kicked off, no pun intended, but it kicked off this past Thursday at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. Detroit Lions went into Kansas City and upset the Chiefs 21-20 on the night that the Chiefs got their banner unfurled and received their Super Bowl rings. Unfortunately for them, the Lions spoiled the party and they came out with a 21-20 victory, but the majority of the teams kick off tomorrow. And with the exception of the Monday night game, this Monday night between the Jets and the Bills. So we're going to preview the NFL season. We're going to look at each division, and we're going to spend most of our time talking about the AFC North and the Cleveland Browns because we are in Cleveland, but we're not going to neglect the other divisions and the other teams. And then we're going to talk a little about college football as well. And then at the end of the program, as I do each week, I will give my hero and my zero of the week. So, Jay and Keith, I'm going to throw this question out here, and you guys can jump right in on it. What are the three things that you feel most comfortable about the 2023 Browns, and what are the three things that concern you the most? Keith, I'll go to you first.
All right. Let me feel comfortable that for the first time this season that we have a borderline superstar quarterback in Deshaun Watson, who has most of his issues behind. As most people know, last season was marred about his off-the-field issues. This is the first time he's going to have a full season, 17 games, in which all of his off-the-field issues, everything's behind him. And he wants to get back to form to what he was when he was with Houston. And I believe that this team right here is a lot more talented than what it was when he was with Houston. And he's got a lot to prove. And I think that you're going to see the real Deshaun Watson this season.
Jay?
My three, you want me to give all three or just one right now?
Well, oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry, Keith.
Yeah.
You got two more.
I got two more.
Right.
Technically, you got five more. You
Right.
gotta give me three bad ones.
Yeah, if you don't have three, don't feel like you're, enslaved to that, for lack of a better term. But, just the things that you are most positive about this year, the things that concern you the most about this team for this season.
Well, number two is I'm encouraged about the defense this year because with the addition of defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, who I believe which was the best off-season move that the Browns made this year, bar none, which was him coming on with the Browns. You're going to see a lot better defense this year because it's a completely, almost revamped defensive secondary, especially with the addition of Darius Smith, who's really going to help out with Myles Garrett. So you're not going to have teams double teaming Garrett this year as you have in previous years. And I believe that the defense is going to have a lot more turnovers this year. You're going to see maybe more interceptions, more aggressiveness than you have in previous years. And my third is I'm hoping that Coach Stefanski will turn this team around. Improve on his game management. Know what to do when you're in the red zone. And not be afraid to know when to kick a field goal and when not to kick a field field goal. I know we've had issues that the kicker with the addition of Dustin Hopkins to replace Kay York, who is now with the Tennessee Titans, who we will see the Tennessee Titans in week three, I believe it is.
Yeah, it is a third game.
I believe
of the
it's
year.
week 3. That we
You're
will
right.
face
It's the
Tennessee.
third game of the
So,
season.
but however, the kicker situation was needed to be addressed before the start of the season, and we're hoping that Dustin Hopkins, who is a more professional kicker, would help out in the Browns in that aspect because I think that the special teams need to improve vastly this year, and I'm hoping that Bubba Ventrone will be just the person who would improve on the special teams.
Oh, okay. Jay.
I'll give you my 3 positives. The speed addition at wide receiver. Elijah Moore is like a utility knife at wide receiver. He's quick, he's fast, he can go in the backfield, create mismatches for people. On top of what I think people have kind of sleeping on is Marquise Goodwin. And he was out with the blood clots, and thank God he got back and is healthy and can play. I'm just glad he's just healthy more than anything. But that guy is a burner. And he is more or less not as fast as Anthony Schwartz, but he ain't far off him. But he can catch, which Anthony Schwartz he unfortunately could not do as a receiver.
Yes.
Don't have. We're not going to bury this guy,
No.
So yes, I'm excited about that. Nick Chubb. I mean, come on, number 2, Nick Chubb. He is the most consistent running back in years to come. He's the best back in the league, and he's still here. And I mean, who can't be positive about Nick Chubb? And I'd say my number 1 is I'm going with Keith. It's the defense additions and starting with Schwartz and then going with Darius Smith and just the guys on the inside. So we ain't gonna have teams running down our throat anymore with Shelby Harris and Tomlinson on there. And let me look up his name. His defensive tackle Hurst.
Yeah, and
don't sleep on that guy either. He is a hell of a player. He's just unfortunately been hurt years and years. If he can have 1 year healthy, he's got an approved deal, I believe. Like, watch out. He could be a nice little guy that rotates in. So they're my 3 positives.
The 2 players that I would add that you would look for as far as on the defensive end, the addition of who was the player that we signed from Kansas City, the safety.
Oh, you're
Thornhill is the safety.
Right.
Who's questionable for tomorrow.
And the Ohio State
Ronnie
safety, Ron
Hickman,
Hickman, who was a walk-on. Now that in itself was an amazing story. 2 players, one from Ohio State, who were walk-ons this year. And usually when you have walk-ons, they're going to be proven as to be solid players, in the long run. So I would look out for those 2 players in the secondary because I think you're going to hear a lot from them this year.
You said walk-ons. I know you meant undrafted.
Walk-ons, exactly.
I know you meant undrafted
Undrafted free agents.
So 2 guys' names that you guys mentioned that I want to ask you about. Keith, you mentioned Dustin Hopkins.
Yes.
Are you concerned because there's somewhat been a knock on him about being able to kick in cold weather? And I mean, I don't have to remind either one of you that come November, sometimes maybe even late October, that Cleveland Browns Stadium, even back to the old stadium, Municipal Stadium, is not the ideal place for a place kicker. So do you have any concerns about whether or not he'll be able to pass the test come November and December into that, and hopefully if the Browns go where all of us around this table are hoping they'll go to, kicking in January in Cleveland Browns Stadium?
Well, on average, you would have that with most kickers in the NFL, unless your name's Justin Tucker, but I digress. You would have a fair amount of concern. However, I still believe that Hopkins was an upgrade considering what Kay York could have been. Now, I heard the pundits saying, maybe you should have kept him on the practice squad and see if he would improve because, even though he's technically a second-year player.
I think he was offered
He was
Yeah.
offered. He
He
didn't want to
didn't wanna
sign.
stay.
He
He
didn't
left.
want to stay. Right. You're right, Jay.
Yeah. So even that, even it was just the writing was on the wall during the preseason thing. I think the Browns gave him as much rope as they can to see if he can improve it. It just got continuously worse and worse during the preseason. So the writing was on the wall as far as that. Dustin Hopkins is an upgrade, however, well, time will tell.
Well, one thing, and generally get to you because I want to ask about a guy you mentioned, but one thing that everybody should keep in mind here is when the call was going forward saying they needed to get rid of K York, get rid of K York. Okay, that's fine. I don't have any problems with that. However, what you always must keep in mind is this: that guys are available for a reason. Okay, Dustin Hopkins was available for a reason. He lost out on the kicking job to Dicker. I forget his Cameron Dicker, the kid from Texas. That's the kicker with the I still call him the San Diego Chargers, but with the Los Angeles Chargers. So and then I heard a call about Robbie Gould, but Robbie Gould he's still on the street. These guys are out there for a reason. So I'm not saying that they should have kept Cade York, and I'm not saying that Dustin Hopkins will not be successful. All I'm saying to Browns fans is that remember that these guys are out there for a reason. It's not as though they were on somebody's roster and the team was reluctant to let them go. They either cut them, uh, outright, or they traded them because they felt they had something better. Jay, you mentioned Elijah Moore, and I'm excited about him too. Do you have any concerns though, given his, for lack of a better term, slight build, that a lot of usage of him may lead to injury with him?
Not so much anymore. The way the NFL has changed, the evolution of the slot receiver, you've seen like all these guys who are just not as big as they used to be are dominating the NFL right now. And I think what do they change the rule? You can't touch them with your hands, can't hand check them after 5 yards and stuff like that. They just made it so much easier for these smaller, quick receivers. You can't hit them so bad anymore over the middle, and can't like just when they're unprotected. So they made it so these guys can actually play again or play now. Where I think 20 years ago, this guy, Elijah Moore would not have made it in this league whatsoever.
You're listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure don't bring the noise. We have NFL Roundtable today with Always Positive Jay and Keith and Lakewood. It's 20 after the hour right now. My concern, not so much about Elijah Moore as a receiver. My concern is more so when they want to use him on jet sweeps and things of that nature, because even in the preseason, in the Washington game, that's when he suffered his injury in that game. And I realize, and I don't go into every game worried about guys getting injured, because we know the nature of the National Football League, that it is a collision sport, and unfortunately people are going to get injured. So my hope is that they use him judiciously on those types of plays and use him more, as you said, as a slot receiver. So second thing I want to ask you guys about the Browns, you mentioned Kevin Stefanski. And I mean, it's well known around the league. And if you watch or listen to any of the national shows, such as Get Up or First Take or Undisputed, some of those shows that have come on those networks and what have you, it's well known that Kevin Stefanski is on the proverbial hot seat, if you will. So, just you guys' thoughts and opinion. Do you think it's fair for Kevin Stefanski to be on the hot seat? And do you think the Browns front office and ownership put him there by bringing Jim Schwartz in here, a former NFL coach, and Bubba Ventrone, who is rumored and was interviewed for some head coaching jobs and didn't get it? So do you think the front office and management and ownership put him on there, and do you think it's fair that he is on the hot seat?
Well, my opinion on the hot seat, I think most coaches are on the hot seat. If you're not doing your job, you're going to get fired. They don't play around in the NFL whatsoever. And I also think we as media people, we put the hot seat on people that might not even technically be there. Like Jimmy Haslam might absolutely love Kevin Stefanski, and if he doesn't make the playoffs but has an all right record, he's just like, don't worry, you're good. You're our guy going forward. We don't really know what's going on in there for sure. We speculate all the time, you know what I mean? But yeah, if he comes out and he has a losing season, he's going to get canned. How many other coaches, if that happens to, that if they have losing seasons, are probably going to get canned? You know what I mean? Like, I think the hot seat is always a overblown subject in sports talk, personally. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it was kind of proven because look what happened with one Baker Mayfield. He took us to the playoffs, got us a playoff win in Pittsburgh, of all things. And then next season, he banked on himself, barring that injury, and he overestimated himself, thinking that the Browns were not going to let him go, but the Browns actually did let him go, and that's how we wound up with Deshaun Watson. And you can never say never when it comes to the Haslams. If Kevin Stefanski does not produce this year, if he does not get into the playoffs this year, I think that his tenure with the Browns is going to be over.
All right, let's say he wins 10 games, the offense is rolling, and we lost games just kicker situation, or just close games, and we just missed out on the playoffs. You think he's getting fired?
Not if he went. If you're right, if he goes 10-7, and for whatever reason they miss the playoffs because the AFC is so competitive, or whatever the case may be, yes, I think he'll be in trouble if they win anything less than 9 games. Really, I would say anything less than 10 games. And to your point, Jay, yes, coaches, if you don't win, everybody's on the hot seat. But some coaches, because of their past track record, primarily, if not exclusively, with that franchise, have bought themselves some leeway.
Oh, like an Andy Reid is not on the hot seat. That's
Mike
what I said,
Tomlin.
there are some that are going to get away with stuff like that.
Or
But we've also
Belichick.
seen Hugh
Belichick,
Jackson
yeah.
survive 1-15 and 0-16
Yes.
and continue. Like I was on. I still can't believe he survived that, but that's a story for another time.
Neither do I. And the thing is, this year, because, and again, we know that paper doesn't play, that you have to produce on the field. I get that. I'm sure all of us get that. The thing about this year is the reason why I think that he is under pressure and may be coaching for his job this year is this is the most talent, at least on paper, that the Browns have. You think about it. They had issues on the defensive line. So what did they do? They went out and got Zadarius Smith. They went out and got that Tomlinson. They went out and got Double O to fix up the defensive line. Then they had problems in the secondary. They went out to fix up the secondary. So it looks as though they addressed the issues that they had that were causing the deficiencies in the past. But so this is why I think that now, if you look at it again, it's on paper. We don't know what the injury situation is going to be like this year. God forbid if Watson were to go down tomorrow for the rest of the season, that pretty much throws the season out of the window.
Yeah, like let's say that does happen.
Yeah, so if that happens, then he'll get a break. He'll get a break.
My point, that's what I was trying to get to, is like there's 1,000,007 scenarios we don't know what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And it all matters how the season goes down. Like I said, if the offense is rolling and they're scoring 40 points, but for some reason everyone thought Jim Schwartz was going to come in here and he just falls flat on his face and the defense just sucks completely, and we're all like, what happened to the new defense we're supposed to have? And I thought we all blamed Joe Woods. Kevin Stefanski's fine if his offense is rolling and they're losing because of the defense, which I do not think is going to happen.
No, I don't either.
But you see what I was saying. My point is, like, or if Deshaun Watson gets hurt, we just start suffering like bad offensive line injuries, and just we've seen seasons go off the rails through injuries, and it's not a coach's fault. So, is he on the hot seat? Yes. Is he not on the hot seat? Yes. You know what I'm saying?
Well, if and the interesting thing about it, you're listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. The interesting thing about it is that, and I don't like only because of where I think it falls too early in the season. I don't like it that early in the season. But the Browns' bye week is after week 4. After they play Baltimore here in Cleveland, then the following week they're on the bye. And God forbid if they're on, let's say no injuries, which again I'm like you, Jay, I don't think this is going to happen. But this scenario, no injuries, and they're 0-4 at the bye week, then I think he would be gone. But I don't see that happening either. So
again, like that's a scenario that could happen. It's so hard to predict what's going to happen in the NFL. It's such a fluid situation on how teams can make it. Like you just never know what's going to happen because it's such a violent sport and people's bodies are just constantly getting beat up, and you can have an injury at any given point. I mean, we watched the guy he died on the field last year in Damar Hamlin.
right,
Thank God he came back.
yes,
But
yes,
anything can happen.
anything can happen, and usually does. Now, both of you all mentioned the defense and the major change that was made, other than the upgrade in personnel, of course. The major change that was made was the hiring of defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, who was the defensive coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles a few years ago when they won the Super Bowl, head coach of the Lions and got the Lions into the playoffs, and is regarded around the league as one of the top DCs in the league. So with Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator, do you guys think that now this eliminates all excuses that they had in the past? It seems like over the last couple of years that Joe Woods took the lion's share of the blame for the failures of the defense. And I was not one of those people who I liked the hiring Jim Schwartz, don't get me wrong, but I was not one of those people who wanted to put everything on Joe Woods. So now that you have Jim Schwartz in here, does that eliminate the excuses now if the defense does not perform up to par? Keith?
It wouldn't eliminate them. However, it's the reason why he was hired was to give Stefanski more time to concentrate on the offensive side of things, since Jim Schwartz has a proven track record of success with other teams in the NFL. So his objective is to make sure that the defense improves. That way, Stefanski can spend more time with the offense and maybe better team management and other team clock game clock management which is what I'm trying to get to. Stefanski really needs to improve on game clock management, and if the defense can help him get turnovers and put them in position to where they can score points, that's what you really need. You really need someone who can do that. So, I think that it could be of a concern. But then again, if something were to ever happen to Stefanski, then Jim Schwartz is the fallback plan. What do you think?
Or either him or Bubba Ventrone, one of the two. Jay, do you think his hiring eliminates? Because we don't have to run them down. We had a whole litany of excuses.
I mean,
as to
I
why.
think everything they did this season is the no excuse for everybody, like I said.
I agree.
And yes, I do think it is. Like Keith said, he's very proven. Everywhere he's gone, he's been very, very, very successful. He's won Super Bowls. This guy knows what he's doing. He's given everything he needs on his defense, from what I can see. And yeah, it's time for this defense to step it up, and he's the guy I think that can lead us the way. So no excuses for sure.
They were in the bottom of the rung as far as defense in the
Yeah, because they couldn't stop the run.
They couldn't stop the run. I mean, the one game that stood out was the Atlanta game last year, where they just ran it down our throats, and you were livid if you were a Browns fan watching Atlanta just kept feeding the ball, and you couldn't stop them because the tackling was so poor, or the defense, or nobody was there in the position that they were supposed to be there. And you need a proven defensive coordinator that knows where to stop the run when it's needed, and if you need a turnover, try to go for that too.
See, with you, I don't call for anyone's job. I think it's kind of silly, but Joe Wood's very, very unproven. That is a fact. Like, I think he went from like secondary coach right to defense coordinator for us, and that was like he only had 1 year as secondary coach. And the confusion in that secondary, you could see it. They didn't know what they were doing. They're constantly pointing fingers. Is that on the players? Yes. Is it on the coach? Yes. It's both of them. But now you got a coach that's going to demand, like, no, man, you're not pointing fingers no more. This is what we're doing. He simplified it for those guys. Like, and what blew my mind is how good we were in man coverage last year, and we barely ran it. And he kept running this zone, and these guys are getting confused. And is Joe Woods going to have another chance in the NFL? Sure, you can. Hopefully, he just learned from his mistakes. Like, I hope best for everybody. But now we got a defensive line where finally Myles Garrett's got a guy who's got a pulse on the other side, and that won't only want to come in for only third downs, like the guy last year. And we got defensive tackles that can eat up guards, so our linebackers who aren't built big but they're fast are not going to have these giant guards coming out here blowing them up and injuring them all the time. There is no excuse, like you said. Like, this defense is ready to roll, and I expect them in the top 5 in this league.
They also have returning regulars who played very well last year, but were injured, and now they're back, such as Taki. They're back this year, and so
JOK.
And
Anthony Walker, do not sleep on that. He's the most athletic guy, no, but he is the leader of that defense. He's the guy in the middle that makes it all go well.
And part of it too, I think the blame last year should have been equally spread because the confusion in the secondary. I mean, we saw the same issues late in the year in the game against the Steelers, which was the last game of the season. I'm talking about the game in Pittsburgh. Was the last game of the season. You still had the same breakdown that you had in the Jets game, which was the second game of the year. I don't blame Joe Woods, however, for their inability to stop the run because that was a personnel issue, which you can lay at the feet of Andrew Berry. Speaking of people who, may or may not be on the hot seat. So I lay that there. So let me ask you guys this. So now that you have Schwartz, should Kevin Stefanski become more of a game manager and allow his coordinators to run the defense and the offense and he be the game manager? Or should he still be the de facto offensive coordinator on game day? The reason why I raise that is that Nick Sirianni, the Eagles coach, the first year that he was there, he was the Eagles offensive coordinator. But then the second season, which led them going to the Super Bowl, he backed off and let his offensive coordinator, who is now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, his name escapes me right now, but he let him run the offense. He let his D coordinator run the defense, and he was a game manager. Now, was that the reason they went to the Super Bowl? No, of course, because Jalen Hurts really stepped up his game. He really improved where many thought he should have been the MVP of the league last year. But how do you guys feel about that? Do you think that Stefanski still should be hands-on with the offense as the offensive coordinator on game day, or do you think he should just be a game manager, let Van Pelt be the old coordinator, let Schwartz be the D coordinator, and he be the game manager?
I say keep him at the offensive coordinator. They hired him because of his offensive play calling. And you mentioned the Eagles, who he gave up his play calling. Well, the guy he went against is Andy Reid, who's been calling plays his whole career. Some teams it might work better that they do it that way. Maybe down the line they will let Van Pelt call the plays. But for right now, Stefanski, if he feels confident that he should be calling the plays, I got to go with him and believe that that's the best for the team. Because frankly, he knows what's best for the team far more than I know what's best for the team.
Yeah, I agree. But also one thing, he needs to improve on game clock down and you need to score with less than 2 minutes to go. You need to improve on that. And also,
I think that's going to come with his experience, though. Like we all, like he is a first-time head coach with us, and we want everything to be perfect right away. Like no head coach has ever come in and just been the greatest coach ever and knew everything right. He's going to learn along the way, and he's going to get. I hope he gets better, Keith, at that. But I think having Schwartz he don't have to worry about that defense at all. He's like, you got this. Now I only got to worry about the special teams, your clock management. So let's see if he can improve this year.
if the defense can give him, put him in a position to where you can score a field goal before the half, that's what he needs to concentrate on. Improving that aspect of his game clock management to where if the defense can come up with a turnover and you're inside enemy territory with less than 2 minutes, and you'd either try to score a touchdown or at least get 3 points out of that. That's what he needs to concentrate on that aspect of his game clock management.
Well, and my take on it is, I would like to just see him turn it over, because to your point, Jay, the Andy Reids of the world are few and far between. Because if you look at most, not all, of course, because you just mentioned Andy Reid, but most of the more successful, if you will, teams in the NFL, the head coach is the game manager during that day. You look at Tomlin, you look at Belichick, just go down the list that I mentioned what Sirianni did last year. So I think even Doug Peterson in Jacksonville turned it over. I can't remember if he did or not. But the Andy Reids, yes, I think to Key's point, for Kevin Stefanski to be more game aware, I guess, and that he can monitor all the events that are going on in the game, I don't think that he should be worried about calling plays. Now, should he have the power to overturn a play that is called by his offensive coordinator? Of course. But for the time being, I think that one of the things that hurts the Browns, and we'll look at one of his weaknesses, to your point, Keith, is his game management, how they get caught in situations and circumstances that if he were more aware, I guess, may not happen. And I just think that he should turn those duties over to his coordinator and let his coordinator call and run the game there. Now, as I said, during the week, of course, he has his input. He puts in the game plan, works with the offensive coordinator to put in the game plan. But on Sunday or Monday or Thursday, whenever they're going to play, I think he should be more concentrated on being the game manager than being the game manager and the play caller both at the same time.
Well, time will tell how that works out, I guess. So,
Yeah, but you need to be in a situation where when to use your timeouts and when not to use your timeouts, and also in game management. If you're going to try to score before the half, learn how to use your timeouts to where you can at least get 3 points out of it, and then maybe if you get the ball in the second half, you can double dip and score an initial possession in the second half, which was one of the things that the Browns lack. They always allow the other teams to double dip because their inability to score with under 2 minutes left to go in the half, and that's something that needs to be improved upon.
So like me, I look back at how many great years he got out of quarterbacks. Like Case Keenum got the best out of him. He made Jacoby Brissett look like he was scoring over 20-something points a game. Like they were one of the better offense with Jacoby Brissett amongst all these great quarterbacks in this league.
Wait, hold up, Jay. Keep that thought.
All right.
Let that set in for one moment, folks, that are listening. What he just said was true. They were scoring over 20 points per game with a journeyman who had a career losing record by the name of Jacoby Brissett. Had his best season without question last year when he was saying, go ahead, finish your point.
Yeah, I can go down, like Baker Mayfield had his worst year, but he also had his best year under him. So there, he gets the best of his quarterbacks, and then where last year, I want to see what he can do with Deshaun Watson. Last year they had to run Jacoby Brissett's offense. Like they couldn't just go and change and cater to Deshaun Watson. Now I get to see what this guy, like he is an offensive genius. There's not a doubt, and I want to see what he does with Deshaun Watson. So I'm just curious what his play calling with a guy where he's got the ability to scramble like we've never had here. He's got a stronger, more accurate deep arm than we've ever had here, and let's just I can't wait to see what he's going to unleash with this kid.
Yeah.
And like I said, the game management does need improvement. I totally agree with you guys, but I also think it's one of the easiest things for a coach to improve on. Like if a coach can't call plays or come up with plays, like it's most likely not going to start developing. It's going to take a lot longer than, all right, I could buckle down. This is what I've been doing wrong in the past. I think it's an easier fix than being able to call plays.
And Jay, I agree with you as far as Deshaun Watson, because no matter how people want to joke with me, no, I was not around when Otto Graham was here. Okay, so but I've been here since.
I was there in my past life, Jeff.
The first quarterback I remember the Browns had was Jim Lanowski, I think it was, then Frank Ryan or what have you. That said, Deshaun Watson potentially is the best quarterback that I've seen in a Browns uniform. That includes the MVP season of Brian Sight and the Kosar years of the 80s. We've never had anybody as athletic as him. His accuracy is there when he's at the top of his game, his arm strength, etc. So, all that being said, two-part question. Well, I'll do the first part, then we'll get to the second part, then we'll take a break because we should be about the top of the hour by then. What do you guys expect to see from Deshaun Watson this season? Keith, I'll start with you. What are you expecting or hoping to see from Deshaun Watson this season?
I'm expecting Deshaun Watson to take us to the AFC North title and to get us into the playoffs. That's what I'm expecting. And go further than the playoff win against the Steelers in 2020. Get to you would want to get to at least the title game. At least get to that level, to the AFC title game, at least to that. And I would consider that a successful season.
So, are you saying that, and all things being equal, let's say health is not a question, are you then saying if the Browns don't get to at least the AFC title game, that he fell short of expectations?
Well, if they make it to they did make it to the divisional round when they came so close to defeating Kansas City, only because of the defense allowed a journeyman quarterback to be successful in a 4th and 18 play that kept them from going to the AFC title.
About those.
Yeah.
A quarterback from the team up north, too.
That was the worst part. And thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah. So, that's why I'm kind of hoping that with Deshaun Watson, his aspiration, he wants to go to the Super Bowl. And with this team, Andrew Berry spent a lot of time giving him the weapons that he would need to be successful with this team. So now all that's left to be done is for Stefanski to start coaching and start winning us games. And I think we got the quarterback who could do it.
You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we should not bring the noise. Football Roundtable today with Keith and Lakewood, and always the positive Jay. It's 45 after the hour. Jay, what are you looking for from Deshaun Watson this year? What are your expectations?
I expect him to have his career year that he's the best year he's ever had. Like he said, I think he's going to be better than he's ever had. He has the best defense he's ever had so far behind him. This is the best team he's ever played for. Like he ain't ever had anything like this. He's got Nick Chubb behind him. He's got a whole off season of working, and this guy, from what I heard, has just been working his tail off, constantly studying. Like he wants the respect that he used to have, being considered one of the top quarterbacks, or now he's in. Is he at 15 or is he at the 17th? And what about those last 6 games? Like, he's tired of hearing that, and he's grinding out there to make the best he's ever had. And I don't expect anything less of that. Record-wise, like Keith said, I want to see him make a little playoff run, and that's what I expect from the kid.
And Jay, to your point, if you, and again, I do this only to, be prepared to do this show on a weekly basis. Watch the national shows and what have you. It's very curious to me all throughout the summer. When I would go to the gym and work out, I would plug into the television and watch Get Up and First Take and what have you. When they mention the AFC quarterbacks, they talk about what a gauntlet, and rightfully so, because it is a gauntlet. When they talk about what the gauntlet of the AFC is because of the quarterbacks, they mention they mention Josh Allen, they mention Aaron Rodgers, ad nauseum. I'm so tired of hearing about the Jets. We'll talk about that in the next hour. They mention Tua, they mention Lamar, they mention Joe Burrow and Pat Mahomes, and Justin never won a playoff game in his life. Herbert. And even now they're trying to convince me that Kenny Pickett is going to be a Pro Bowler this year.
Kenny, Joe Montana, Pickett?
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about that in the second hour too, as we look at we go down the teams in each conference. But Deshaun Watson seems to be an afterthought. And I'm saying, Lord, wait a minute, hold it. Time out on the field. This dude 3 years ago on a crappy 4-12 team was the leading passer in the NFL. Dude has
after his star receiver
right. D-Hop had got traded. Dude has not forgotten how to play football. What kills me is they look at the last 6 games. Well, hello, he sat out for basically 2 years. I defy you to name me any quarterback that can sit out for 2 seasons and then come back in and
on top of that, which is huge.
All
that
pressure.
I don't care what anybody says. If you can't be completely focused at what you do, I have like a simple factory job. But if something in my life is just hectic and crazy, like I gotta like triple focus because I'll mess up at work and I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't focus, and we all have suffered from it. And if you have what he had going on last year, and with all his court cases, on top of like our jobs are simple, we have trouble. Imagine you have 3 seconds and you have giant monsters trying to come down and crush your face and break you, and they're literally trying to break your body, dude. Mm-hmm. And then you got to throw it on accurate to a guy running a 4.340 with dudes all over him. Like, no one can do that. I'm sorry, it's impossible. Patrick Mahomes couldn't have done that.
A-Rod,
Tom Brady wasn't doing that. Joe Montana ain't doing it. No one was going to come in and be that successful.
Well, the case in point, Michael Vick. Michael Vick was
just stole my thunder.
He was in prison for 2 years, and when he first came back, it took him a year for him to get back to.
And they put together the dream team.
And he won the comeback player of the year award, which is what I really was hoping that would be the same for Deshaun Watson.
No,
he would just fall out.
No, they're not going to give him any awards.
No, you can forget that, Keith. That's
like I said, he can come out and have his career here. I expect he ain't winning MVP.
Nope.
They're not going to give him anything.
Which leads me to my next question, and then after this, we'll take a break. And you're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. So most of the national pundits, if you look, have the Browns finishing 6-11, 5-12, 7-10, and I contend this, and then I'll get you guys' take on this. That if you put that logo, if you remove that orange helmet logo and put any other logo up there, NYG, put the pirate with the swords coming in and out like this, or put the Lone Star, or just name the logo, that ridiculous Baltimorean logo that they have. If you put any other logo up there with that talent, there is no way, and this is not a homer take, this is just how I see it. There is no way that these pundits would be picking that team with the talent that they have on paper to finish 5-12, 6-11, 7-10. So how much do you guys think of these? And by the way, I'm loving this. I like it like that. I'm not complaining. This is what I want them to do, so that at the end of the season we can have a "see, I told you so." But how much do you guys think plays into these observations about the national narrative about Deshaun Watson?
Go ahead for Keith.
Well, 2016 Cavaliers, everybody thought they were under the radar, especially when they were down 3-1.
Yeah, I didn't think they were coming back. You're looking at one.
Yeah. So, see, just because the media, the national media, always have had a negative view of no matter how good a Cleveland team is, they're always going to come out with a negative view on something. And you could, even if you have a team that could win it all, they'll still come up with some, a tired old joke that's from 60 years ago about how the Cuyahoga River, blah, blah, blah. So, they're never going to give Cleveland their due, no matter how talented a team. Even if they won a championship, they will never, ever give Cleveland their due.
So do you think it's Cleveland or you think it's Deshaun Watson? Because, the Guardians were getting a lot of love earlier this year. The Cavs during the LeBron era, especially the second run, got some love. Do you think it's a Cleveland thing or do you think it's a Watson thing? Because the talent is obvious.
It's always been a Cleveland thing. Now, you have to go back the entire history of this city. And you and I, we're right at the same ballpark. So you know the history of this city. No matter how good of a Cleveland team is, there's always some national pundit that's going to knock us down no matter what.
I mean, ESPN loves Real 47.
Yeah. So,
Or they just busted out the whole, the drive, the fumble, and they just throw everything terrible in sports that's ever happened to us. Keith's right, but it is Deshaun Watson too. There's no doubt denying what he did or what happened and the story and all that. And there's a lot of feelings about that, and it's even still hard for a lot of people to talk about, and it's going to take time. And that the same thing happened to Kobe Bryant when he had his allegations against him, and then even before he unfortunately passed away, he was then considered a girl dad. He can turn it around. There's no doubt. Everyone loves, the society is weird. We love to bring you down, but at the same time, we love a resurrection story even more. But yeah, what does my shirt say? Cleveland against the world, man.
Yeah.
There's no doubt we're Cleveland against the world. That's how we roll, though. We don't mind it. I like it. It doesn't bother me at all.
Well, here's my thing about the Deshaun Watson thing. There were two separate grand juries convened. Neither one of the grand juries, in the state of Texas, by the way, and we do politics on this show. I'm not going to get into political rant right here now, but suffice to say that Texas is not real friendly to people who look like Deshaun Watson. I'll just put it like that. Two grand juries in the state of Texas were convened, and neither one of the grand juries found enough evidence that was presented to them by the district attorney. You all heard that saying, I can indict a ham sandwich. Well, this must have been people who don't like pork, because neither one of the grand juries that were convened found enough evidence even to bill him. He got no bill both times. That should say it all. Jay, I know that you have to leave, so.
But before I want to hit on that, how me and Kevin at our show, we always discuss it. Is I always got to look at it from a black male culture. It's how you guys are wrongfully accused of stuff all the time. But I also have to look at it from a woman's point of view, where sexual assaults don't normally no one gets convicted really because it's so hard to prove it. So when they go into that situation, they talk about Deshaun, you gotta I try to put myself in everybody's shoes, but at the end of the day, I I wasn't there. I'm not God. I'm not. I shouldn't judge him because I don't know what happened. I don't know what like. There's so much to the story with how it was kind of weird with the owner and all this stuff popped out after he said he wanted to leave. Like we don't know what really. None of us know what happened. So
We didn't
I'm
see
not
the
here to
evidence.
judge him anymore. I'm not or any ever. Like I'm not. That's not me. I'm never gonna do that. But at the same time, if someone's like, "Oh, I can't root for the Browns because of this," and it's a female, and let's say, how do we know that that person didn't go through court and then like it did, like she was assaulted and nothing happened, and the person got away with it? Like, of course, she's gonna look at this situation much differently than us. You know what I mean? As Browns fans, so
Right.
I think as a whole, we should all like just be very understanding of each other's feelings on that whole situation. That's all.
Right. Okay. And Jay, I know you got to run. Keep you can stay with us for the next hour, right?
Right.
Okay. So before you go, because I was gonna have you guys do it at the end of the show, so I'll let you do yours now. Give me your prediction on what the Browns' season final record will be this year. Um, who you have winning the various conferences, the AFC and the NFC, and um, who's your Super Bowl winner this year?
I think the Browns are going to win 12 games this year. AFC, until someone dethrones them, I'm just going to have to go with the Chiefs as much as I can't stand it. And the NFC, I like the 49ers, to be honest. If they didn't have to have Christian McCaffrey play quarterback for them last year, I think they beat the Eagles. So, 49ers then win the Super Bowl because I'm not going to pick the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl.
You have an MVP for the league this year?
Your buddy who hasn't won a playoff game will go with Justin Herbert.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We're going to take a break now. We'll be back at you after the top of the hour. But right now, we're going to take a short break, listen to some music and some commercials, and we'll be right back with you. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Be back with you in a moment.
I wish I could just sit here and talk sports. No, I get to go unload my dad's truck full of a bunch of giant pieces of wood.
Really? Oh,
No,
wow.
I don't want to do this. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Always good to see you, man. It's good. It's fun.
So yeah, I wish you could say too. I
Yeah.
like to hear your thoughts on these.
Yeah,
Right, Jay.
I could keep going and going and going and going.
I know.
But yeah, unfortunately, I could go home, change, and hurry up and beat my dad
Keep
before.
in touch.
Always. Yeah, you might be invited into our chat room here soon too. By the
You
way.
didn't get a chance to plug
I,
it.
I'll tell you real quick. You want to write it down? You can do it.
Yeah, we spoke to Riz about you joining us.
So, you know my Twitter handle
Yeah.
at alwayspositivej, and then our show is on Twitter is VTL_pod. So Voice of the Land. Yeah. And then on YouTube, it's just Voice of the Land.
Yes, we got a pen over here.
It should be. Probably over here in front of me. And they're very. I'm trying to see if I can hear them music when I'm playing.
His podcast is at VTL_pod. It airs on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. And if you watch it on YouTube, it's Voice of the Land and, there as well. So go ahead and catch him on there, check him out on there, and you may have one day hear a familiar voice on there too if you're a regular listener to this show. We are working on that too. We still have in studio with us and Keith Norman, aka Keith in Lakewood, and our call-in number is 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. So if you have any thoughts or about what we talked about in the first hour, we deal mostly with the Cleveland Browns in the first hour. In this second hour, we're going to do an overview of the NFL. So if you're not a Browns fan, if you're a fan of another team, as long as you're not a fan of the Bengals, Steelers, or Ravens, no, I'm just teasing. You guys can call too, just teasing. But if you're a fan of another team, or if you want to call and ask questions about your team or talk about your team, please feel free to call us at 216-939-5087. Or if you have any observations on the things that we talked about in the first hour, be glad to hear from you there. So, Keith, what I want to do here is I want to go division by division. We're going to start with the AFC first. We're going to leave the AFC North for last and then go to the NFC and do a division overview on each one of these divisions in the NFL, talk about who we think are going to win each division and who we look forward to be in the respective championship games in each conference and do our Super Bowl picks. And if we have time, we can even do a prediction for some of the games tomorrow that I'm sure that are interest to everyone out there. Now, we're not going to do every game, but we'll look at some of the big games on the calendar for tomorrow. So we're going to do that, and then towards the end of the hour, we'll spend some time on college football, and then we'll close the show as we always do with our Hero and Zero of the Week. By the way, just a program note for next week. Next week, we're going to be doing the program that we would have done on last week. So we're going to talk about should there be term limits within the Supreme Court, within the Senate, and the Congress of the United States. We're going to look at the controversial teaching or in the state of Florida about how slavery was a benefit towards the slaves. We're also going to be looking at a recent poll that showed that a majority of Americans do not favor either President Biden or former President Trump in a 2024 election. So we're going to be looking at those topics on next week. But today, as you know, if you're a regular listener, we talk sports and politics here on this show. And so today, we're talking about the NFL. So Keith, let's look at it. Let's go division by division. Now, I want to start with the AFC East at first. And let's look at the New York Jets, the darlings of the HBO Hard Knocks. I've been watching that and looking at that, and then all of the hype that they've been getting because they signed Aaron Rodgers. Well, actually, they traded for Aaron Rodgers with the Buffalo Bills. Do you think that the Jets are going to live up to the hype? How do you see them in this division this year?
New York Jets, in my opinion, is probably one of the most overhyped teams during the entire offseason this year. And it all circled around Aaron Rodgers, whether he was, am I going to stay in Green Bay? Am I going to take my talents to New York City? So he finally decided to take his talents to New York City. And now, suddenly, they believe that they can go to the Super Bowl. And, before that, before he left Green Bay to join the Jets, he was contemplating retirement.
Yeah, he was. He said he was, before he did that darkness retreat, that he was very close to retiring.
Yeah, and now suddenly he seems to have a new lease on life by going to getting a taste of New York lifestyle and thinking that suddenly he can take the Jets to, what the Bengals did a couple of years ago. I believe that the Jets are overhyped. Will they be good? Yeah, they will be good. And will they make the playoffs? Possibly. I believe it's a possible chance that they will. But as far as the AFC East, I think the team that's probably the most complete team that no one's talking about are the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
That's the team that I think that everybody is not paying attention to. Everybody's paying attention to the Jets. Of course, everybody's going to pay attention to Buffalo. Buffalo had a running back last year. They would have been going to the Super Bowl instead of the Bengals. They just had a running back. And I think the Buffalo still has that issue of not having that feature running back in their offense. And I just think that Miami right now is the most complete team in the AFC East. So I believe that the Dolphins may win the AFC East this year.
Well, when you look at the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is 39 years old. And while he's not a statue back there, he never was a great mobile quarterback. He knew how to escape. But, it's not like he was Josh Allen or in his prime John Elway, certainly not Lamar Jackson. And while the Jets' defense was very strong last year, I think they were in the either top 5 or top 10 in the league last year. Some people are just assuming that that's going to automatically translate into this season as well. But what people don't realize is that when you're playing a team like the Jets last year, who quarterback situation was mediocre at best, with Joe Flacco.
Oh, don't remind me of Flacco.
And Zach, what's his name, was the quarterback last year.
Oh.
Their situation, and that when you're playing a team like that, and you know that their quarterback is not a threat, you have a whole different type of game plan as an offense. Now with Aaron Rodgers there, offensive teams are going to game plan against the Jets where they're going to probably in all likelihood open up their offenses even more to try to score more points because they know that the Jets offense will be more explosive now that they have Aaron Rodgers, picked up Dalvin Cook in the offseason as a free agent from Minnesota, signed him, had offensive rookie of the year rather from Ohio State, Garrett Wilson. And so I don't think that the Jets defense is going to slip down to the bottom, but I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year because they're going to be facing teams that are going to run more open offenses, if you will. And the Achilles heel of that team, and that's why I brought up the fact that Aaron Rodgers is 39 years old, will be 40 in December before the season is over. The Achilles heel of that team is their offensive line. So if they're not able to protect Aaron Rodgers, and they're going to get Presall back this year, he was having an outstanding rookie season until he tore his knee up, and he'll be back, but they don't have to rush him back now that they've got Dalvin Cook. But if they can't protect Aaron Rodgers in a division where you're going to face the New England defense, who's got one of the best defenses in the league, now they get a break this week. They don't get they don't see Von Miller, but Von Miller will be back this season, and unless he has another injury, he'll be back the second time they play the Jets. So you're in that division. You're in a division with Miami, as you said. Miami has a very improved defense. If they cannot protect Aaron Rodgers, and especially given the schedule that they have, where they have to face the Eagles, the AFC East plays the NFC East, so they have to face the Eagles defense and the Cowboys defense, two of the better defenses in the league. That can go a long way into putting a halt to all of these grandiose projections of the New York Jets this year.
Yeah, so another team, well, you have New England, who everybody, it's a work in progress. Belichick, who's always a mainstay, is always working on improving that team. So you cannot sleep on them. They're basically slightly above 500 team, but that's another team in the AFC East that you cannot not look, not pay attention. You have to pay attention to that team. And what can you say? You're gonna have one division winner, and you're probably gonna have at least a wild card team that's gonna come out of the AFC East.
Well, and about New England, last year their quarterback Mac Jones in his sophomore season took a step back. Of course, that could be attributed to the fact that they had Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, two defensive coordinators that were employed as the offensive coordinators there. Now they got Bill O'Brien, who, by the way, was Deshaun Watson's coach when he was in Houston. So you'll probably see some improvement in Mac Jones this year. Their problem is that they swung and missed both on DeAndre Hopkins and Dalvin Cook. They were not able to get either one of those to upgrade their offense. If you look at their receivers, their tight ends are good, but their best wide receiver is Juju Smith-Schuster, who is maybe a little above average. And
but he's also a journeyman player. Who's I believe who's seen his prime while he was with the Steelers, but he's still a pretty good commodity. He's still a playmaker. But I think he's not the Juju Smith that we all came to hate when he was doing his tenure with the
Steelers. Right. Yes, and I agree with you about the Dolphins. Of course, before I get to the Dolphins, the Bills, Josh Allen, great. Him and Stephon Diggs have to get on the same page. You just wonder, have they kissed and made up, so to speak? But their weakness on their offense is still a lack of running game.
Exactly. And you could see it coming last year during the playoffs when Cincinnati wound up playing in Buffalo, which I thought never should have happened, but because of what happened to the Buffalo defensive player, it turned out to be that way. I predicted back then that Cincinnati was going to win that game because they was going to let Joe Mixon just run it down their throats, and that's exactly what they did in that game because Joe Mixon ran it for over 100 yards in that playoff victory, and it just stymied Buffalo. They were looking at each other and saying, we can't believe we lost this game. We should be better than this. Yeah, you should have been better had you had yourself a premier running back who can help you score points. And they just didn't. They were just relying on Josh Allen throwing the ball all the time. And if they're going to do that again this year, it's going to be another year coulda, woulda, shoulda for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it puzzles me too about them. Two things. Well, actually, three things. Why, number one, did they not try to make a move to get Dalvin Cook when he was a free agent? Maybe the cost was too high, but if you're that close, you may want to do what the Rams did. And in this case, it wouldn't even cost them draft picks. They all would have done was maybe have to go over the salary cap. But there's ways, and you and I both know that these teams figure out ways to get around the salary cap. So why they didn't go after Dalvin Cook, that's number one. Number two, I haven't even heard their name mentioned in the Jonathan Taylor talks. As you know, the situation with Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis, he wants out and they want to trade him. And maybe there is something going on behind the scenes that we just don't know about. And the third option, too, is they didn't even take a flyer on Kareem Hunt. Now, is Kareem Hunt what he was when he was a rookie with Kansas City and maybe even his first couple of years here in Cleveland? Probably not. But, he's probably better than what they do have with Singletary, and I don't even know who their other running back there is. The proof is in the pudding, so to speak, that Josh Allen is their leading rusher.
I thought for a moment that Kareem Hunt may have been a nice fit in Buffalo. But now you're mentioning about the situation in Indianapolis with their star running back. And, well, that's another NFL subject, which is the devalue
The running back
of the running
position.
backs. Yeah, which that's another topic which tends to be in mind. However, if Buffalo needs a running back, he's available. I don't know why they don't try to talk to Indianapolis to try to make a deal for him.
Exactly. I don't either. And about the Dolphins, you are right. I like the Dolphins too. I like the Dolphins in that division. The only thing that makes me hesitant about going all the way on board for the Dolphins is Tua.
Yeah.
His injury history, especially his concussion history, and that he's just really maybe one or two more concussions away from being out of football, period, let alone playing this season. So the big X factor in Miami is keeping Tua on the field. Because when you look at that offense with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek, the Cheetah Hill, and their tight end Gesicki from Penn State, and their offense, arguably may be one of the best offenses in the league, especially one that doesn't get a lot of notoriety.
Yeah,
Correct.
and Miami is facing a tough opening day opponent when they travel to LA to
Play
face
the
the
Chargers.
Chargers.
Yeah.
That's going to be a very, very tough game that Miami's going to face. So if you're going to prove that you're going to be one of the top tier talents in the AFC, that's a game you got to zero in on, which is opening day, which is this coming Sunday in LA versus the Chargers.
So I like Miami to win the East. This is all, of course, centered on whether Tua is going to stay healthy.
Yeah.
So I like them to win the East. I like Buffalo to finish second. I got the Jets third, and to the chagrin of Mike Greenbaum and everybody, all the Jets fans at ESPN. And I've got New England last. But that division, along with the AFC North, you can make the argument, are the two toughest divisions in the NFL. I'm going to get to the AFC North last after we look at all the other divisions. How do you see the AFC East playing out?
Well, I'm pretty much on the same par with you. But as I said, I believe that Miami's the team to beat in the AFC East this year. And Buffalo, I think they'll make it in as a wild card. Whether the Jets will make it in as a wild card, it all depends on whether Aaron Rodgers will stay healthy
Right.
this year also.
Right.
So that's another thing you have to. It's not only Tua for Dolphins, but also whether Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy also for the Jets. So that's something we have to watch out for. And don't forget, toward the end of the season, the Jets come to Cleveland for their last home game.
December
The last
27th.
regular season home game, which is in late December.
Thursday night football, December 27th, I
Yeah.
believe it is.
And I would zero in that game because I think that's the game which the Browns need to exact a little revenge upon them, especially after the mishap from last season.
And who knows, given the records at that time, that may be a quasi-playoff game because the winner, that may be an elimination game for the loser of that game. So
It could very well be It could very well be playoff implications when that game comes around. So, but I guess we can move on to the AFC South.
Yeah, we're going to the South
Where-
now. Well, now that's the opposite. Now we just gone from one of the best and the toughest divisions to one of the worst divisions in the National Football League. So
Yeah, however, did you see the emergence of a team which, for the last few years, is one of the laughing stocks of the NFL? That is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have proven to be a viable contender this year, and you cannot sleep on this team. This is a team that's obviously is the top of the cream of the top of the AFC South, because they built their talent. It took they had to do this from the grassroots up to develop that talent for which they're team. And and they came up upon everybody. They were one of those teams to where who was going to be the surprise team. You always have one surprise team every year in the National Football League. And last year, it had to be the Jacksonville Jaguars, who was that surprise team that snuck up on everybody. And now everybody's going to have to keep an eye out on them because they will beat you at any given day if you're not careful. And they have the talent and they have the ability to do it.
Well, and they won the division last year with a 9-8 record. They've got the best quarterback by far in that division in Trevor Lawrence, and they strengthened their offense by getting Calvin Ridley. Don't, to use your term, don't sleep on that because now that's given Trevor Lawrence a go-to guy that's dependable, that's been a Pro Bowler in the past that you may have forgotten about because he was suspended due to the NFL's gambling policy, but he's with Jacksonville now, and that's going to make them stronger. You got the Titans, Tennessee Titans in that same division. They did sign DeAndre Hopkins. They've got Ryan Tannehill, but you start to wonder now, is the tread starting to run thin on the tires of Derrick Henry?
Yeah. It is the window actually closing on the Tennessee Titans. That is the more prudent question. Whether the window is now closing on the Tennessee Titans. And in my opinion, I believe that window is starting to close on that team before they're going to have to look, before management's going to have to look and find out whether it's time for them to revamp their players once again. So this is an interesting year for the Tennessee Titans. I think it's a make or break year for the Tennessee Titans if they're going to continue in the direction that they're going. If not, they may have to completely restructure the team.
Well, to their advantage, and I'll just give very brief mention to these two teams, but to their advantage, they get to play the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts twice a year. Now, as far as those two franchises are concerned, their focus this season will be the development of their rookie quarterback, C.J. Stroud, former Buckeye in Houston, and Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. Of those two, Keith, which of those two you think has the brighter future when it comes to NFL?
More than likely C.J. Stroud because he's been a proven player in Ohio State. He has the talent to get it done. It's just that Houston's got to have to provide him with talent. Offensive line, running back, receivers. It's going to take a while for Stroud to develop. But I believe that the ceiling's bright for C.J. Stroud, and I believe that he can prosper in the NFL. As far as Indy is concerned, with their ownership and management problems with players and everything, but don't forget they went through an ownership issue in the offseason, which then got kind of ugly. So with Indy, I think the only thing that they want right now is let's get the season started so we don't have to listen to all these off the field issues. So we'll find out what's going to happen with Tomlinson, but we'll have to wait and see as far as the Colts are concerned.
Well, the thing too with the Colts, there are many who feel that Anthony Richardson, their rookie quarterback out of Florida, is the next Lamar Jackson, but even better because there are some who believe that he will be more explosive and more dangerous than what Lamar Jackson is and was when he was at that stage in his career. But his issue is that he hasn't played a lot of football because when he was at Florida, there were games last year where he would look just like someone who you've never seen play quarterback like that before. And then there's other games he looked like somebody who had never played quarterback before. So there's going to be a lot of ups and downs with him. The same with C.J. Stroud. And these are two teams that are really playing for the future and playing to get themselves in good draft positions where they can stockpile draft picks to fortify, put talent around their two future, at least they hope, their two future star franchise
But
quarterbacks.
don't forget, the Indianapolis Colts do play the Browns, I think it's game number 5, I believe.
Yeah, Cleveland plays Indianapolis.
At Indianapolis.
Yeah, Cleveland plays Indianapolis and Houston. They're at Indy, they're at
Yeah,
Houston,
Houston.
and they've got Jacksonville and Tennessee and Cleveland this
Yeah,
year.
so, yeah, and among also the schedule, we also play the NFC West
Yeah,
this year.
yeah, we're gonna get to them in a minute.
So,
And so next we want to look at the AFC. So wait, before we do that, so I got Jacksonville
yeah, oh
winning,
yeah.
Tennessee in second, and then you can take your pick between Houston and Indianapolis, who's going to finish third or fourth. And I only see one team in that division
Yeah.
making the playoffs, and that's the division winner, the Jaguars.
Exactly, because I don't see any other team outside of Jacksonville, talent-wise, is going to match up in the hierarchy of the AFC. Now, moving on to the AFC West, of course, the cream of the crop in that division is always the
The world
Chiefs.
champions.
Of the world team. But as you notice, with the key wide receiver gone, they fell to the Lions this past Thursday on to open up the NFL season. And well, question is, no team has gone to the Super Bowl, at least that I know, 3 straight times. You think that Kansas City has the talent to go back to the Super Bowl again?
Well, if they did go, it wouldn't be 3 in a row. Because remember, Cincinnati went 2 years ago. Cincinnati beat them in the AFC Championship. But do I think they have the talent? Yeah, they do. As you correctly stated, they missed their all-world tight end, the Cleveland Heights product, Travis Kelce, in their first game the other night against the Lions. They're also going to have to get their all-pro defensive tackle back, Chris Jones, who's holding out right now, who did something very interesting the other night. So the Chiefs played the Lions on Thursday Night Football, as you all well know. And their all-pro defensive tackle, Chris Jones, is holding out right now. And he came to the game and sat in one of the luxury suites flanked by his 2 agents, one on the left side, one on the right side. And I don't know, that was a curious move to me. I don't know, Keith, how do you think that went over with his Chiefs teammates?
Well, you're sitting in a luxury booth. We have both agents flanked on either side of him, and it doesn't. If that was a sign to try to intimidate the franchise, then it might fall back upon the player. Okay, because sometimes winning through intimidation is not necessarily winning. You want them losing in the long run. So we're going to have to wait and see how this standoff resolves itself. But I think Kansas City still has the talent and they still have the players to get back to the playoffs. They're going to win the division again, but the team that's always in flux in that division has always been the LA Chargers. It seems that with that team, you have the talent, but it seems that the coaching seems to be the issue.
Well, yeah, Brandon Staley, their head coach, we were talking about in the first hour, and you're listening to the right side on No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure to bring the noise. Our calling number is 216-939-5087, 216-939-5087. But coaching, their head coach, Brandon Staley, it's when Jay was on in the first hour, he mentioned how Hugh Jackson, how he doesn't know how Hugh Jackson survived going 1-31. It's a mystery to me how Brandon Staley is still the Chargers head coach, given some of his questionable decisions during the game, going for it on 4th down on his side of the field, and some of his other coaching decisions. The fact that they had a 27-0 lead against the Jaguars in the playoffs last year, and completely blew it and lost that playoff game, and the mystery is they fired their offensive coordinator, which, okay, that I still don't know. They hired Kellen Moore, the Cowboys' former offensive coordinator. But the Chargers, as you said, are a mystery team. I like Justin Herbert. I do think that he is a really good quarterback. I guess I'm not as high on him as some are, that some have him up there in the top 5, and I don't see
I
that.
don't see that neither because, oh, they rave about his accuracy.
And his arms.
Yeah, but accuracy does not necessarily give you wins.
No, and I mean when he was at Oregon, and again, it's not all on him, and I don't want to come off saying it's all on the quarterback. But the big games when he was in college, his teams for the most part didn't come through. The same thing now in the National Football League. Even though his defense did blow a 27-0 lead, I don't see Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or somebody like that, even with their defense doing that, still not bringing their team through to victory. If I have to go out and outscore you as my defense is not stopping you, fine, that's what we're going to do.
Well, yeah, the Chargers, that's what they were trying to do last year. And they escaped quite a few games in which, let's just say, if the Browns would have played better, they never should have beaten the Browns last season. But their coaching is that to be desired, and I believe that their coach is on the hot seat just like Kevin Stefanski is.
I think his seat is even hotter.
Yeah. So it's almost so okay. We're going to give you one more chance, and if you can't get us at least a wild card this year, then your future is not going to be very bright with the organization. So, I see the Chargers. This is an important year for that franchise. They either better get further up in where they need to go, or else there's going to be a lot of changes with that franchise. So it's a team you need to watch out for this year. And now, Denver.
Yeah, that's what we're going to get. I'm just going to get to them. So, big question there. Sean Payton, was Russell Wilson, was that a mirage last year? Is he now on the downside of his career? And can Sean Payton turn him around?
Now that's a good question. I believe that he's on the downward side of his career.
I think they'll bench him at any time. They'll put the former Patriot backup Stinson in there. Did you see that happening as well?
Midway through.
Because you figure that Sean Payton wasn't the coach when they not drafted, but when they traded for Russell Wilson. And, if he can't do it, he may just bench him.
Well, they're going to wait and see what they're going to do the first 4 games. And I believe if they're 1-3 after the first 4 games, then you might see a change at quarterback. And don't forget, we play Denver this season, so that's something. If you're a Browns fan, that's something you really do need to pay attention to on how well Russell Wilson plays for Denver, and they have the Vegas Raiders this week to open the season. And there's a lot of turmoil as far as that franchise.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we're going to get to them and we got to move quickly because we're getting close to time. But, yeah, they got a lot of, they brought Jimmy G in because they let Derek Carr go. They brought Jimmy G in to be their quarterback. But, as you rightly said, they've got this off the field, and quite frankly, I don't even know what to say about this situation with Chandler Jones that is going on. That's a bizarre situation where he says that they sent crisis intervention people to his house, and he's wondering why they did that, and the organization's not making a comment, and it just seems that there's something bizarre going on there with the Raiders.
That's the one word, you were to sum it up, would have been exactly my sentiments. Bizarre. So, but they're playing Denver to open the season, so we'll see how those two teams will fare out. So next up, I think we
Yeah, so we got
go to the NFC.
Yeah, we're gonna go to the
go to the
NFC. We are, but before Kansas City first, the Chargers second, Denver, then the Raiders. I think Kansas City and the Chargers both
Make the
playoffs.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe the Chargers will make the playoffs.
Okay, so far then we've got the Chargers and the Chiefs. That's 2 teams in the AFC. We've got the Jaguars. That's 3.
Yeah.
We've got Miami 4 and Buffalo 5. So that only leaves 2 more spots. So let's get to and we'll come back to the AFC when we do the North. But let's quickly go to the NFC. The NFC East, the defending champion, NFL champion, National Conference champion, Philadelphia Eagles. They're coming off a Super Bowl hangover, and the history has shown that the team who lost the Super Bowl the next season, either some don't even make the playoffs and others don't make it back. Now, they did draft Jalen Carter out of Georgia, who's a potential defensive rookie of the year. Do you see the Eagles going back to the playoffs and perhaps even going back to the Super Bowl this year?
Playoff, yes. That remind me of what Cincinnati did last year. Cincinnati had their so-called Super Bowl hangover, and they went all the way to the AFC title game before bowing out to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I believe that Philadelphia can get back at least to the NFC title game. Because I think only one other team right now I think is better than them. We'll get to them in a little bit. But I believe that in that East, the Giants, however, which made the playoffs last year, I don't think they're going to repeat them. I don't think they're going to repeat them. I don't think that they're going to get back in the playoffs.
I don't either. I won't say they were a fluke, but we know that there's always a team that makes the playoffs one year and doesn't make it the next, and that's the Giants to me. The Eagles, the other thing, too, that they have to overcome is that they lost both their offensive and defensive coordinators. They have head coaching jobs now. The defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator both have head coaching jobs, so they're gone. What about the Dallas Cowboys? So you've got Dak Prescott, and that's the huge question mark. And Mike McCarthy let Kellen Moore go as the offensive coordinator because he said all they were concerned about was scoring points, which that statement mystifies me. But Mike McCarthy, now the head coach, is going to be the offensive coordinator, and he did that before when he was in Green Bay. Their defense arguably is the best, can possibly be the best defense in the NFL this year, especially with their secondary and their linebackers, their whole crew. There can be the Micah Parsons, maybe Defensive Player of the Year this year. So they have the defense, and they have weapons on offense. The question mark is Dak Prescott and the coaching.
Yeah. Now, as far as McCarthy is concerned, now if you're a fan, sometimes you get frustrated and you want to fire him. But as far as McCarthy is, I don't think that there's a tenured coach that has this longevity other than Mike Tomlin. As far as McCarthy is concerned.
Well, Belichick.
Yeah, Belichick too. Yeah, but
and Andy Reid. I think Andy Reid's been in Kansas City longer than.
But yeah, as long as you got a guy by the name of Jerry Jones who runs everything in Dallas, you think McCarthy's going to be there for the.
Well, see, I don't know if the Cowboys fall short again this year, they may hire Dan Quinn. We got to quickly move along. I like Washington this year. I like Sam Howell, their quarterback. Possibly may even become comeback player of the year this year. I look at him to maybe have the same kind of year that Geno Smith had in Seattle last year.
And they signed Jacoby Brissett as their backup.
Backup, yes. So I like Philadelphia and Dallas making the playoffs out of that division. Washington to be improved, but maybe fall a little short of being a playoff team, but be improved. I look the Giants to bring up the basement there. Let's go to the NFC West. 49ers.
Which I believe it's the team to beat this year in the NFC. I believe that overall, if they get their quarterback settled, if he plays just enough to win them ball games, I think talent wise, this is a complete team. The 49ers, okay, and they didn't quite make it last year. I think they have their Super Bowl or bust for this franchise this year, I believe.
Well, they didn't make it too. They lost that NFC Championship game because they had you and me playing quarterback last year after the injuries again. The question that I have about the 49ers is if the bloom comes off the road, so to speak, of Brock Purdy, can Sam Darnold guide that team under the Kyle Shanahan offense with the weapons they have, Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and their offensive line? You're right, they are very close to being a complete team. Their defense is dominant, and especially since they now got Nick Bosa in the fold. Fred Warner is on that, so they've got an outstanding defense. Kyle Shanahan, one of the brightest minds, and so, yeah, they are formidable.
Yeah.
Seattle second.
Seattle's a playoff team. You cannot sleep. They went to the playoffs this last year, and I really believe that Seattle has improved. Especially, Geno Smith, he's becoming one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. It just seems as though with him, every time that you ask for him to prove it, he somehow comes through, and on the most part. So this is a team you got to watch out for, Seattle. I predicted they're going to be a wild card team this year.
Which they were last year.
I think they may even challenge San Francisco for the division title. So it's going to come down to head-to-head between Seattle and San Francisco to determine that conference, though.
And they do have weapons with DK Metcalf, with they drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba, the rookie out of Ohio State. So they do have weapons there in their receiving core, and so they look strong as well. The Rams, too many injuries, and they sold out to win the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and now it's time to pay the price. I forgot to mention too Tyler Lockett with the Seahawks, so I don't see them much. And then the Arizona Cardinals are tanking to get the number one draft pick next year to get Caleb Williams.
Yeah, they traded with the Browns
to get Joshua Dobbs. So that just tells you all you need to know about them.
Yeah, and speaking of the Rams, now they made the trade with Detroit to swap.
Yeah,
Now,
and they got them a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Now after this, in the long run, who turned out to be the better quarterback? It might turn out to be
Jared Goff.
Yeah.
But you know what? Even if that does turn out to be the case, they can say that unless the Lions win the Super Bowl, they can always say we got a Lombardi out of that. So real quick, the South, there's not much to say about them. That's a bad division as well. I guess I have to pick New Orleans to win that division because they've got the best quarterback out of Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Bryce Young is a rookie, and the kid from Cincinnati is the quarterback in Atlanta. So just New Orleans has got the best defense. They got the best quarterback. They got Michael Thomas, and the other teams will bring up the rear.
And in the NFC North, I'm picking the Detroit Lions to win the division this year. Now, the Detroit Lions, they barely missed the playoffs last year in an emotional win in the final game of the regular season when they went up to Green Bay and kept Green Bay from making the playoffs, even though Seattle had won that game prior to kickoff. So even though the Lions knew that Seattle had won and they were not going to the playoffs, played a rather emotional game the last game of the regular season.
They did.
And with them this year beating the Chiefs, this is a team that's been slowly building their talent over the last few years. Of course, they have an old hand. It used to be our old general. GM was over there in Detroit now, and I like what the Lions are doing.
Right.
I really like the direction that they're going.
Desmond Ritter was the quarterback at Atlanta. I was talking about. We're kind of up against it, so real quick, I like the Lions too, but I think Green Bay is going to be a lot better than what people think. I think Jordan Love is a lot better than what people are saying. Minnesota has to replace Dalvin Cook. They have to replace some holes on defense, although they do have a new defensive coordinator in Brian Flores, a former Dolphins coach. So that should be an upgrade for them, similar to how Jim Schwartz was an upgrade for Cleveland. And the Bears are improved, but I still think they're going to bring up the rear, but they're not going to be as bad as they were last year. Which brings us to, who do you have winning the NFC? And then we'll look at the AFC North, and then we're going to have to wrap it up.
I see Green Bay. Maybe like San Francisco. Excuse me.
Okay,
you got
San Francisco.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with, it's a coin flip between them and the Eagles. I'm going to say the Eagles only because I like Jalen Hurts more than Brock Purdy. And usually in those games, it comes down to, when those teams are as evenly matched as those, it comes back down to who has the better quarterback play. And so I'm going to go with the Eagles, but it wouldn't shock me if the Niners came out. Okay, the AFC North. Cincinnati picked up Orlando Brown Jr., and I think the reason that they did that is that they were tired of seeing Myles Garrett run roughshod over them. And they moved Jonathan Williams, their other tackle, which used to be their left tackle, to the right tackle. Problem is, when they play the Browns, and you've got Zadarius Smith over on that side. And it's not as though Myles Garrett has not fared well against Zeus Jr. Their receiving core is top of the food
Still
chain.
top of talent,
yeah, you can put them with Miami. They've got the two best receiving cores in the league. They still have issues protecting Joe Burrow. You wonder, because they were willing to let Joe Mixon go, and he came back and re-signed with them for a lot less money. Their defense is underrated and very good. So how do you see the Bengals this year?
As everybody knows, if you've been following them, Bengals are a second half team. They don't play very well in the first half of the year, but somehow after the bye week, toward the second half, toward November and December, they seem to get it together in the second half of the season. As far as this coming Sunday here, I see the Browns winning this game, even though they're favored by Cincinnati's favored by 2.5 points. However, since Joe Burrow has never won here in Cleveland, and I expect the same to happen this coming Sunday, I expect he's going to be pressured all day. I'm sure that the Browns are probably going to sack him a few times. And if you keep Joe Mixon to under 65 yards, he does not play very well against the Browns. Anytime that Cincinnati wins, is that Joe Mixon rushes for over 65 yards. He rushes for 65 yards or under. This is going to be a very significant Browns win. I see the Browns winning this game. I see Deshaun Watson at least two touchdown passes in this game. Chubb may run for one. And I got the Browns winning by at least a touchdown.
Okay, now as far as being, you're right. In the past, the Bengals have started so like that. The difference is this year, given the strength of this division, if I'm them, I'm looking at the fact that I really can't afford to do that because, and the other thing too is if I'm the Bengals, I want to make sure that we have home field advantage so we don't have to travel to Buffalo, we don't have to travel to Kansas City. The teams would have to come here to play. So the problem though is that Joe Burrow, and let's not underplay this, Joe Burrow missed all of training camp
Oh yeah.
due to his calf injury. So that may play a part in them starting. So they're here this week against Cleveland, and next week their home opener is against the Ravens. So they've got two divisional foes right off the bat, just like the Browns do. So moving on to the Ravens. The Ravens signed Odell Beckham Jr. They drafted Zay Flowers. They still have Mark Andrews. And I really love, not because he played at Ohio State, I just really love what he can do when he's healthy. And that's J.K. Dobbins. Their offensive line is good. You know, their defense is a little overrated. Their defense is getting by basically on their reputation of the past.
Yeah.
They signed
Yes.
Xavier Clowney. They got David Dejabo, who didn't play much last year, but in his last year with the Wolverines when he was in college, him and Aiden Hutchinson were terrors on that. Like, so where do you see the Ravens this year?
Ravens needed to improve on their receiving because you cannot rely on Lamar Jackson's legs all the time. You got to rely also on him throwing the ball. And with them getting Beckham this year, that they provide to be a weapon. Now, if Beckham doesn't
Stay healthy.
not only that, but be a role model as far as the Ravens locker room is concerned, then they may have a chance because the Ravens are always formidable no matter what. They always seem to be into the mix. They always seem to be a contender, a playoff contender every year, whether it's for the division title or playoff. They always seem to be in the mix all the time. You cannot overlook this team. So they're gonna be right there in the end.
And finally, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are the media darlings this year. I've heard a lot of positive, I won't call it hype, I've heard a lot of positive report on Kenny Pickett. They have looked good in the preseason when they played Buffalo, when their ones played Buffalo's ones. The Steelers were up 14-0 and moved the ball with relative ease against Buffalo, sans Von Miller, of course. And, you know, their defense is always going to be good. It's just, I wonder, are they starting to get long in the tooth with Cam Hayward there on their defensive line, and they picked up Patrick Peterson to put in the secondary this year, but, you know, I believe his best days are behind. But they still have former Defensive Player of the Year, T.J. Watt. They still have Minka Fitzpatrick.
And they have the #1 draft pick, George Pickens, who played
Yeah.
very well last year.
And Deontay Johnson.
For the Steelers. So.
And Najee Harris. And they've improved their offensive line. So perhaps the hype is not overdone with the Steelers. The way I see this division, and I'll give my Browns prediction for their season and the game tomorrow after I say this, and then we're going to have to wrap up. I see this division. I see Cincinnati at 12-5, Cleveland 11-6, Baltimore 10-7, Pittsburgh 9-8.
Okay.
And from this division, I see Cincinnati obviously making the playoffs, and Baltimore, and so what did we have? We had
you said the Browns were 11-6.
Yeah,
so,
Cincinnati
so
and Cleveland. Yes.
Yeah, you would have them as well.
Yeah, so we have Cincinnati, Cleveland, Kansas City, the Chargers, Jacksonville, and
you would have to. You could not include the Ravens because.
Yeah, so we can't because that's 7 teams there.
Yeah, because you've
So,
already mentioned the
right.
Chargers. You've
the
already,
charges.
you've already mentioned the charges you have.
I may want to rethink
Yeah,
that.
you have.
I may want to rethink
Well, yeah,
that. 'Cause
Miami.
it-
Okay, yeah.
So you got Miami and Buffalo.
Okay, that's two.
Jacksonville is 3.
Yeah.
Then you have
Cleveland
you got
and
Kansas
Cincinnati.
City, that's 4. Cincinnati, Cleveland 6. Baltimore 7. I'm eliminating the charges. I think Baltimore is better.
All right.
The AFC champion this year, until they're dethroned, I have to go with the Kansas City Chiefs again. So I guess I'm like Jay. I've got Kansas City, and
until someone beats them. And Cincinnati came very close to beating them.
did.
No.
As far as the game tomorrow, I can see Cleveland 27-23 on tomorrow's game, and unfortunately we're out of time, so I can't do my college football predictions. I'll save that to last week. So to next week rather. So keep. But
thanks for having me
thanks for being on, and we
on.
sign off here with our hero and our zero of the week. Our hero of the week this week is former NFL receiver Mike Williams. Mike Williams was injured this week in a construction accident where a steel beam fell on his head. And they had to put him in a medically induced coma because the beam caused a cut on his head, which caused an infection. They had to put him in a medically induced coma, and it didn't seem as though he was going to come out of the coma. He was mistakenly reported deceased from his injuries. They took him off of life support on Thursday, but instead of succumbing to his injuries, he is still with us, and he's still fighting to stay alive. So, former NFL player of the Tampa Buccaneers and the Buffalo Bills, Mike Williams is our hero of the week, and please keep him and his family in your prayers. Our zero of the week is Vivek Ramaswamy, Republican candidate for president, and the reason that he's our zero of the week is that he and his family immigrated here from India, and he is an opponent to affirmative action and to affirmative action student loans. Well, it was discovered that he was able to go to college on a $50,000 affirmative action scholarship that was set aside for immigrant students that had immigrated to this country. Affirmative action immigrant scholarship is what it was called. And not only that, but it was discovered that when he filed his taxes that year, that he made $750,000. So if you made $750,000, then you should be able to pay for your own college tuition without taking a scholarship away from someone who deserved it more than you, who are not in the financial position you are, and you showed how hypocritical you are because now you are in favor of affirmative action and those type of loans being cut off. So, Mr. Ramaswamy, for a lot of reasons, you are our zero of the week. You've been listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. We're here every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on the greatest station in the nation, from the greatest location in the nation. But right now, I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your time. And until next Saturday at 3 p.m., shalom.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming.
I need to use the bathroom.
It's right outside.
Hey DJ, you know where the bathroom is?
No, it's right here in the hallway. Oh yeah, I'll show you, but I gotta get the picture.
I only know the basement bathroom. I don't know here.
I'll show you. Where's the key to the
Should be up there, in the front by the hand sanitizer.
Is it the basement or?
There's one right here. I'm sorry, where did you say it was?
In the front, either on that shelf over there on the left, on the right, or did I hand sanitizer? Hold on, here it comes.